basic then to any understanding or appreciation of what it is that the mystic is seeking to affirm, I think, is the knowledge that all of life is one, but all of life is not identical. And what one does with one's self-consciousness is to seek to re-establish a sense of continuity that has been lost or eclipsed in the experience of self-consciousness. The mystic then finds that his approach to meaning, to religious meaning, or to meaning, is through the gateway that connects one form of life with every other form of life. When he undertakes to, when we undertake to classify mysticism in the conventional ways, nature mystics, other kinds of mystics, what we're really saying initially is that behind the flower or the dog or the cat or the man is always, at all times, the one thing. And it may be, you see, that if he meaning the mystic, can become aware of this ground in himself, then this becomes the clue to making the same discovery in other manifestations of life. And he says that, using an analogy of the river, that all the water on all the land comes out of the sea, and all the water in all the land goes back to the sea. That out of which the river comes is that into which the river goes. whether the stream is a rivulet or a lake or a sea or heavy clouds, snow, dew, moisture in any of its manifestations, all of it comes out of the sea. And all of it is on its way back to the sea. Every stream hears and feels the pull of the sea. Now this is essentially the ground of the mystic's position. Now we shall see as we work along together that the categories by which he defines his position may in themselves seem to be absolute. Many years ago when I was in India, I went to visit, to spend 2 or 3 days at Tagore's University. And I had wanted to go there because I wanted to spend some time with a Dr. Sin, who was the head of the Department of Oriental Studies at Shantiniketan. And he was the greatest living authority in in India on the medieval period in Hindu mysticism, the period of the poet Kabir, who wrote, what is it? I laugh when you say that a fish in the water is thirsty. Do you seek the real, the true? Go where you will from Benares to Mathura. If you have not found your own soul, the world is unreal to you. It was Sim's great translation of some of the poetry of Kabir that Tagore followed. But at any rate, the time came and I went to see him. And we sat on the floor, which was the custom. And we began talking for 3 hours. We visited. And when 12 o'clock came, it was 12:15, he said, we'd better stop now because the young people are coming to take you to lunch, and then we will get together after lunch. And as I was getting up off the floor, sort of massaging my charley horses, he said, I see that you are smiling. I said, yes, you're smiling also. And he said, I think we're smiling about the same thing, but suppose you tell me first. So I said, I'm smiling because we've spent 3 hours of our lives that we will never get again sparring for position. You, from behind your Hindu embattlement, will draw a bead, step aside and draw a bead on my Christian citadel, and then dodge back behind your embattlement. And I'm doing the same thing. So they said, yes, that's it. When we come back this afternoon, let's be wiser than that. So when we came back, and we began talking, a very curious thing happened. Something happened to me then that had not consciously happened to me before. In one creative sweep of my mind, I took his Hindu fact into account. And with one creative sweep of his mind, he took my Christian fact into account. Now, having rid ourselves, in that sense, of the binding intensity of our context, we were free then to relate to each other out of the same ground. Now, it is for this reason I jump way ahead to 3 weeks from now, whatever it is, that the mystic is always a threat to the formal structure that the religious institution takes. How to say this? You can understand how he would feel the necessity for bypassing any go-between that would stand at the gate of entrance into his Holy of Holies. He is also puzzled and bedeviled by the necessity for having to reduce his experience to units of comprehension for the mind. It is also for this reason that he finds it most difficult to deal with any demand for proof. And it is his insistence that all categories of whatever kind, and these categories include dogma, theologies, all categories of any kind, in essence, are creations of the mind. They are what the mind does when it draws a bead on the dynamic character of religious experience and is forced to extract from its dynamism that which is conceptual. And this at once creates what is perhaps the most embarrassing dilemma for the mystic. how may he establish an empirical validation for his religious experience? Another way of putting it is, how may he protect himself from self-deception? How can he deal with the fact that in something as critical as is his sense of participating in an ultimate destiny, how can he deal with that in a manner that will guarantee that he's not mistaken? It may be, you see, that we are not old enough on the planet yet to know how to protect ourselves from self-deception. And the mind does all kinds of things in an effort to do this. We set up all kinds of categories, all kinds of little labs for doing dry runs on our insights. But it may be, it just may be, that there is no guarantee against self-deception. And it may be further that it is the nature of mind, M-I-N-D, to insist that there be established categories for protecting yourself from being deceived. How may I be sure? In any manner that is external to myself? Or am I driven to accept the integrity of the experience itself as its own validation? And of course, what is characteristic of the mystical experience is also characteristic of religious experience. We want to be sure, but in the nature of the case, how may a person be sure when he's dealing with that which to him is ultimate? There are no categories of the mind by which this can be embraced for validation. Well, that's enough. I'd like to begin by taking a quick look in retrospect concerning the basic assumptions about which we talked last time. I am approaching it from a slightly different angle in order that more light may be thrown on it, hopefully. Man is is a space binder and a time binder. As a space binder, he is concerned with phenomena that take place within the sweep of his senses. He's concerned with sense data. He's concerned with trying to make sense out of the external world of fact by which he's surrounded. And this predisposition to make fact out of the stuff, the conglomerates of his experience and his world, is characteristic of mind itself. It is the way the mind deals with the data of experience. Everything that he sees, every contact that he has external to himself, he is concerned about giving some rationale to it, so that when he observes it or when he reacts to it, he does not seem to himself to be stupid. It is the nature of mind. And I think, of course I'm not sure, I don't think anyone knows really, but I think that this characteristic of mind, to reduce everything to intellection, to units of understanding and comprehension, is rooted in the reference that I made yesterday to the fact that for a long time, how long we do not know, the mind as a separate experience of the individual did not exist. This characteristic for order, for rational understanding, I think, is a holdover from the time when the mind, without any distinction, was a part of the organism. And since this is the right place. No, he'll find it. Oh, where was I? Oh, yes. Since the body, through millions of years, committed harmony, integration, order to memory, as it were, so that we become aware of any part of our body only when that part of our body is out of community. For instance, as long as my little fingers, I'm not aware of it. I become aware of it only when the harmony is broken. So that I may be an idiot, borderline, or actual, and eat and digest my food without any reference to mind, to conscious deliberation as such, because there is an automatic process that seems to take place. Now, it seems reasonable to me that if through millions of years, when the mind was body-bound, it too was a part of this organic harmony, this organic integration, this organic synthesis. Now, when self-consciousness came And the mind began to act as if it were a separate entity. It meaning the mind, carried into this new expression, this new form of activity, the inherent structural conditioning that makes it always look for some kind of order. So the little child asks, why? And then when you tell him or her why, that is simply the prelude to the next why. Always the mind is trying to make sense, order, harmony out of the conglomerates of its experience. Now, it would seem then to me that there is can't think of the word I want. There is I'll have to use harmony. That isn't what I mean exactly. There is a relationship that's vague, which doesn't say anything. A relationship between the external world of things and objects and the mind that observes these things. The mind, therefore, is always trying to find in the external data the rational principle so that it can understand it. This is the basic philosophy for all therapy. When you go to the shrink, for instance, and you start to tell him your story, he insists that you take him by the hand and lead him backwards through your story, because he is trying to find where in your past did the divisive principle occur that results now, 25 years after, in a certain kind of behavior that you can't integrate. Now this is the nature of mind, and this is the characteristic behavior of man, the space binder. He is a denizen of the world. He is a part and parcel of all of the objects, the world that is external to himself, but he always feels that he can penetrate the mystery that these represent to his mind and understand them. Now this presupposes in my thought at any rate, a single continuum out of which all the objects arise and out of which all the objects emerge. And this is a part of what we were talking about yesterday. For you see, the things, to jump the things that are true, for instance, in any religion, are to be found in that religion because the things are true. They're not true because they're in the religion. Now let me say it again. The things that are true in any religion are to be found in that religion because the things are true. They are not true because they are found in the religion. It is not the context, back again to yesterday, it is not the context that determines the integrity of the observation. It is not the context that ultimately gives meaning to the significance of the phenomenon. Now, if it's true, then wherever you find these things, they are true, without regard to the context. So, anywhere, anytime, doing anything, a man may come upon the burning bush and hear a voice say, "Take off your shoes, because the place where you are now standing is a holy place." Now, man, the space binder, is a part and parcel organically and time-space-wise of the world in which he's living and functioning. And he looks for order, he looks for harmony, but he tries to penetrate the object to see if in the mystery of the object he can behold the clue to its meaning. And this is very important, very necessary. But man is more than this. Man is a time binder. That there is a dimension in man, in the human spirit, that cannot be bound or contained, is a better word perhaps, by any state, condition, any property that the organism may have, properties that the organism may have. And it is this time binding quality of mind, and from my point of view of spirit, that enables the mind to project itself in all sorts of ways that transcend the things that separate it from the object that it is beholding. For instance, since we've been sitting here, you have gone into, yesterday, into 5 o'clock. You go back and forth. Space means nothing. You move. You move at will. There's a quality about personality that transcends all external boundaries. That equality that recognizes that in all experience, the man himself is not merely a participant, an actor, but he is also an observer of himself as an actor. There is a margin of you that is never quite contained in anything that you may be about or anything that you may be doing at a given time. For instance, suppose I ask you, name one deed which you can perform or you have performed, which represents you completely, totally, utterly. One deed that contains all that you mean by you. Whatever you name, before the sound leaves your lips, you will remember that, oh, that doesn't include so and so and so. This aspect of me is not included there. So you start over again. You are never quite able to be completely absorbed in the action or the act. Now, before we are through with our journey, you will see that there are some mystics who, in the mystics' experience of union, seem to indicate that this has happened. You are, as a time binder, you are an observer and a participant in your acts. And if we think of all life as being made up of that which is eventful, a series of events, and inasmuch as no single event is quite able to contain all that you are, there is a sense then in which you stand outside of the event. And this has far-reaching significance in man's interpretation of death, just to digress a minute. If death is an event in a series of events to which the human spirit is exposed or in which human life is involved, and if it be true that always a margin of me stands outside of the event, observing the event, then it seems reasonable to me that death, in the sequence of the eventful, would not be an exception to the rule. And I think for this reason, a man may be aware of his dying to the last solitary fraction of a time-space interval. As if it was something taking place that he is observing, but not consumed totally, utterly, and completely by it. Now, we may regard this aspect of man's personality as time-binder as a part of the mystery of human life. I don't know if it may be. The only thing of which I am confident is that there is an aspect of personality that cannot ever be contained in the context in which that personality is living and functioning. And this is why, for instance, to digress again, all tyrannies are bound to fail because there is a margin of the self that cannot ever be contained in the event, however terrifying and terrible the event may be. And a part of the whole psychology that energizes the effort of men to control other men is wrapped up right there. If we can find a way to reduce the personality into the grapple of a time-space interval and hold, then the life can be destroyed. But as long as there is this margin, it threatens anything that undertakes to control it and dominate it. What is the poem? Stone walls do not a prison make, or what is it? Iron bars the cage of. What's the rest of it? You're all students, you know. Come on, somebody. You don't know that? I don't remember it, but stone walls are not a prison, make iron bars a cage. If I have, well, I'll make it up. If I have freedom in my mind and in my soul am free, angels alone who dwell above enjoy such liberty. That's the notion that there is a dimension of me that can never be contained in any time-space interval to which my life is exposed, because I am a time binder. Now, when we deal with the major assumption about life that seems to me to be fundamental to the mystic's quest, we come upon this notion expressed in other ways and at other levels. You may have read in Life magazine before the funeral that